Morning.
Tanya for Monday, the 24th of November, the 4th of Kislev. Let's go. So we're in the middle of a pretty long treatise in the Kuntras Achron in Tract 4, last tract, Essay 4. So we didn't do the past, we didn't do yesterday and the day before. Just understand the flow. The flow was the Arizal wrote a book, or the book was written from his words, called Pri Etz Chaim. And in there it says that in our world, in exile, the primary refinement of the world is through prayer and not Torah study.
Wow.
Which is kind of radical to say, because Torah study is like so important.
I always thought that Torah study trumped.
It does, yes, that's actually what it says in the Talmud, that Torah study trumps prayer. And the Gemara that it quotes was Torah is prayer is Chaye Shah. It's temporal life. Simply because you're praying for temporal things, health in this world, finances. It's temporary things. Torah is God's wisdom. It's unchanging. It's eternal. So seemingly it trumps. Notwithstanding that, he qualifies that with the statement that was true, where Torah study literally was the main mitzvah in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, when maybe even in the times of the first and second temple. And just the way I understand it is that when you learn Torah, you are, we said earlier, it's not just you in the body learning Torah, your soul, which is multi-phased, exists on a higher level, the source of your soul. We call that the Shechina, the Malchut, the Atzilut, the higher world, kind of the manifestation receiver of the highest world called Atzilut. And your soul's rooted there. So if you're studying Torah here, it's also making that happen up there.
Wow.
Now, what happens when there's Torah study going on up there, so to speak, in the highest realm, is that you're infusing divinity. In other words, you're adding more light. It's a world of truth, and you're just adding more truth because you're kind of, by studying here, you're opening more pipeline of Torah, which is truth. So you're adding more light. Now, in the time of the temple, the world was, okay, obviously it's a physical world, there was problems, but at least there was clarity. Temple holy, and the further you get away from the temple, less holy. And, that's kind of parallels the world of Atzilut, where everything is perfectly in its place. It's a world of truth. The problem is in exile, everything is mixed up. Everything good and bad is all together. And we know the goal, according to the Arizal, of the world is ultimately to refine the sparks.
Amen.
Right? There's this pre-mortal world called Tohu, a pre-world world, which was basically a shattering of the vessels, and the sparks went all over, and the sparks are hidden in the most dark places.
You said Morga?
Forget that. The point is that the world has sparks, and you're here in this lifetime to pluck out some good sparks and bring them away from the muck into into revelation.
As much as you can.
As much as you can. Now, in the time of the temple, you learned Torah that did that because it was clear. This is like the epicenter. It's holy, the temple, and you added light there, and that kind of had a far out effect to either magnetically pull the sparks closer or to, from afar, send missiles of them to the bad. The point is that now in exile, everything is intertwined. So you can't just say you're going to act perfect, which Torah study is more like a perfect reenactment of the way things should be. You actually need to have you have to own your human imperfection, your human bodiliness. And from there, cry out to God in prayer.
Amen.
You have to kind of like judo. You have to use the weakness of I don't know why that is so odd. Okay, I don't know why it went. Anyways, you have to use the weakness of your lowliness and make it cry out to God, and that kind of elevates it from below.
Wow.
That was the beginning of this thought.
Sure.
So, in other words, in very short, I'm just reading from yesterday a little bit. Torah study in Kabbalah terminology is rooted in Zah of Malchus, the midot of Malchus, the Zah of Atzilut, the midot there, which is the flow, the masculine, the higher, the flow. Prayer is rooted in Malchut, in the beginning of otherness, of receiverness. Okay, that makes sense because Torah is a reenactment of perfect truth, of the perfect flow in Atzilut, and prayer is essentially the otherness, the receiver trying to connect from below to above. As Malchut is the first concept of otherness and trying to go from below to above. Okay, so like we're just explaining the spiritual definitions of what Torah study does and what prayer does. Okay, so now yesterday it continued. There's another contradiction in the Zohar. It says, on one hand, the mitzvahs are rooted in the they're rooted in the supernal kindness of Zah, right, in the system, because in Zah, which means the midas of Atzilus, the 10 spheres, the flow, the creative flow through the midas, there's primarily chesed and gvura. So the 248 mitzvahs, which is ultimately bringing God's kindness to the body, to the world, it's an embodiment of chesed, of Atzilus.
Wow.
Make sense? Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. Mitzvahs are drawing in God's is mirroring God's kindness, drawing kindness to others, which is ultimately rooted in the highest supernal kindness, the chesed. The prohibitions are essentially predicated upon awe and fear of God. Those are rooted in the gevura. Gevura is the contraction, is the restraint, the awe. Okay, so mitzvahs are rooted in the midas of the spheres. But elsewhere, it said yesterday, they're rooted in the lavnunis, the whiteness, which is a code name for keser, which is above the spheres, the will, the desire, which is beyond the system of midot, emotions, and intellect, emotions, and communication. And he said, they're both true, because on one hand, it has to go through on one hand, yes, the mitzvahs originate beyond the system, but the whole point is to go down. The whole point is to get to the lowest world through the whole chain of command, or the chain of worlds, and elevate it. So yeah, they originate maybe the highest and above the system, what we call keser, whiteness being kind of non-colored, pure. But that has to go through the color spectrum, which is, it has to go through the specifics of chesed and gvur. By the spheres have colors. I think they're associated with different colors. I don't know them offhand, but makes sense, right? I think I have to look into that. Anyways, so and then it goes through, the vessels of intellect, the vessels of emotion. And anyways, the takeaway from yesterday, just to segue into today, is that we said earlier from the Arizal that the whole purpose of creation is to release the sparks, the hidden sparks throughout reality, and bring them, extract them and bring them back to their source. And prayer for that function, in many ways you question, what's the purpose of the world? What's the purpose of reality? There's many answers to that in different Torah sources. So, one could say it's actually in the famous treatise of the Rebbe Rashab, Rabbi Shalom Dober of Lubavitch. He said, he brings all the sources. He says, one reason is that God wants to actualize his potential. One is that God it should be known in the lower realms. Mm-hmm. And he says those reasons aren't ultimate reason, because you can counterpunch them with different, you can prove them that is that really God needs actualization. You're putting some sort of need on God, which is not good. That wouldn't be God. So ultimately says the answer is not really an answer. The answer is really we can't understand it, because the same way as desire has no logic to it. The fact that a person likes, a person wants a home, a person wants whatever they want, like a certain very, very, very important internal desires, they're beyond logic. If a taiva is ken kasha, there's no kasha on a taiva, on a desire. So we don't necessarily have to say there's a reason for God, but the fact is God has it. The fact that God made the world and God communicated the world to be in a certain way shows that God has this desire. Kind of a non-answer in a way, maybe. But the point is that we can definitely say God made this lowly world where everything is so hidden and gave us the Torah. What the obvious is that we should tikkun olam, perfect the world, aka extract the sparks of good that's hidden within all the negative or the darkness. So once we know that's the purpose, and definitely that purpose became the main thrust of exile, because before we were in exile, you could say it was more about self-perfection. Mirror God, mirror God's way of being. Learn Torah, be perfect, be in Israel, in the temple, all that. Once it's exile, and you're basically, what's our reality? We're on Toto, we're not in Kansas. I'm saying that, like, obviously we're put into an arena of imperfection. That's just the world we're born into. Mm-hmm. It's an arena of where bad and good is mixed up, and everything is confusing, and to get the good takes a lot of work, focus, the tools of Torah mitzvahs to extract the good from the bad. That is that's the facts on the ground. So being that in time of exile, that's the facts on the ground, which mitzvah accomplishes an elevation of the sparks? And the answer is that in that context, prayer does it more than Torah study. It's not like you
prayer is based on Torah study, though.
100%. The whole thing is Torah study is God's blueprint. Torah is God's blueprint, right? The blueprint has different, you got to go do the blueprint. So you have to make this room and that room, this foundation. God has a plan of action, business plan. So the business plan is the bird's eye view. But then you got to go do the business plan, and then it becomes, in retail, there's, you could say,
every
what's a business?
morning you say Ra'ash Gadol at least twice,
What?
In the prayer we say every morning Ra'ash Gadol.
So what's the Rash Gadol? What's the Rash Gadol?
That's the Big Bang, if you want to call it that. But
no, it's not.
The gematria of that is 613.
But what's the Rash Gadol? The Rash Gadol in the simple sense. I mean, you're giving nice.
All the angels scream out with a.
What are they exactly? They're screaming out. They are a limited being. They're very holy, but they're saying there's something more. There's a source beyond our angelic. Every angels, the Rambam says, angels is different intellects. It's different spiritual intellects. So you have like 10 words for angel in the Torah or something, and that represents the different intellects. Basically, different consciousness of God in different levels. So the lower angels are screaming out, "Oh, we wish we like there's something," and we're like, we are nullified in the face of the greater something. Anyways, the point is, let's not get sidetracked with angels. The point I'm saying is that if the goal is ultimately leading to refine the world, prayer, which is an expression of the neither world, our world, longing to get back to heaven, get back to a higher place, a perfected place, to connect to our Creator, isn't that the most effective exercise of refining the sparks? You are the sparks. Your imperfect life, your body, our imperfections, are things that we wrestle with, and then we go prayer. We're screaming, God, help us get it right. Help us live a good life according to your will. That is, in a sense, the greatest enactment of the sparks coming home, trying to reach higher. Anyways, now that's a preamble. I think we have to start learning on Sunday because we have to always do these we're in the middle of something, we have to go back. So anyways, page 79. To perform a mitzvah that cannot be delegated to another, one foregoes Torah study, even the study of Ma'aser Merkava, which is the sublime Kabbalistic mysteries of the celestial chariot. He's saying, I don't know if this does us enough justice, but you see in the Talmud that Torah study is greater. At the same time, he says, if there's a mitzvah only you could do, right? Even you're a great scholar, but something comes, only you could do it. You have to stop the Torah study, even if you're learning the greatest secrets of Torah, to go do the mitzvah. You're not allowed to let the mitzvah go by undone if only you could do it.
Wow.
And beyond question, he says, one even forgo prayer. If there's a mitzvah only you can do, let's say you have the ear of a king, and this king is condemning a Jew to hurt you, whatever, causing trouble for somebody, a fellow Jew, and you happen to have grown up in the same block as this king, and you're the only one that can go beseech for mercy to commute the sentence of this injustice, whatever it is. You have to basically not study and not pray until you get it done. Like theoretically, if you have to go on horseback all the way, you go do that, even though you're interrupting your prayer and your Torah study.
Wow.
The reason is, and why is that? Why does the physical mitzvah trump everything? In the event it can only be done, but if it comes to a scenario where it's only this mitzvah that you can only do versus you're staying in the room.
Give me an example.
I gave an example. I just gave one. You grew up with a king.
Only one on the block who can go to this king, and
you know this king. You have a special relationship, and he's this king. Owes you a favor, and if you go travel on horseback to the kingdom, you will commute the sentence, the unjust sentence. You will get mercy for a fellow Jew. You basically don't have to study Torah. You don't have to pray. You have to go get the mitzvah done.
Amen.
If only you could do it. If there's other people that can do it, and it's not going to, then you don't have to go do it.
But if it's a mitzvah, it's based on the Torah anyway. So I mean, it's a moot point.
The reason is, as we have noted, in order to extract the sparks by means of practical mitzvahs, which is the purpose of creation. In addition, indeed, the standing of the practical mitzvah in their study far transcends the standing of intellect, meaning intellectually generating awe and love. For though the verse declares that, though it says a mitzvah, l'davka boy, which means you have to cleave to God, you have to attach to God. How do you attach to God? What did the Gemara say?
Tzadikim.
Nope. But what? Yeah. But another one is that God is merciful. You do God's midos.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind, you're kind. That's the way you attach to God, by mirroring God's ways.
Amen.
So it sounds like the purpose is to mirror God's ways, not to do physical mitzvah as much. right? So still, one does not cleave to the essence of the supernal attributes, only to the externality of their existence, mitziut. As is written by Abraham, he said, "I'm but dust and ashes." This was we explained in chapter 23 in Tanya. Avram said, "But dust and ashes." He's saying Avram was known to be the paradigm of kindness. He was like the earthly embodiment of God's kindness, and yet he said, "My kindness is like nothing. It's like dust and ashes compared to the way kindness is in the Sefirot, in the supernal realm." Whoa. As kind as Avram was, how exemplary he was, it's nothing compared to the way it was in the higher realms. Why? So why? Because in a body, whatever you're going to do it's very powerful, but it's very diminished. You can't compare it to the infinite kindness that God has of creating the world to whatever you're going to do in this world, as great as it is. Although it does mirror it on some level, it's like a glimmer of God's kindness. You can't say it is God's kindness. This is all the more so true with regard to the infinite Ein Sof light. For no thought can apprehend God and his radiance, or the diffusion of the life force issuing from him. One can only grasp God's general existence, that he gives life to all, but you can't understand it. You can see that God, you can see the effects of God. You can't understand what's really going on 100%. On the deepest level of what God's doing, creation is a mystery. This applies even to the supernal beings, of whom we say, "Holy, holy, holy is Lord of hosts." Even the high level intellect of the angels, they say, like, we can only, like, it's removed from us. Kadosh means it's removed. It's high. It's holy. It's like we submit. It's beyond us. And only emanated effects can conceive their cause. Wow. According to the order recounted in Hein concerning their investment of the visages, the parsufim. This is not the case, though, with created beings, even the souls of Atzilot. That's why Moses, when he asked to see God's glory, God said, you can only see my back, my backside. Meaning you can only see an external manifestation of God's existence. You can't understand that at the internal level. In other words, this is just, again, there's a lot of terms here. It's flying here. The main thing that we're getting to, that when you do a mitzvah, there's nothing that's a greater. Why is doing the mitzvah? Ultimately, everything is good. Torah study is really important. Amen. Prayer is important. Amen. Doing practical mitzvahs are important. But why is the practical mitzvah the most kind of the most internal purpose of creation? Because only through doing the mitzvah, it's going to say tomorrow, is where you unite. It's you're uniting with the essence of God. Wow. You're having the bittul to the will of God, in which is enclosed the essence of God. Everything else you're going to do, as holy as it is, even if you're the greatest tzaddik, it can only be a glimmer of what is of that spiritual wisdom, or that spiritual rapture, or that spiritual whatever midah. It's only a glimmer of that. But anything, so a person's super holy, that God's way holier than that. I mean, they're super holy. They're super kind. God's even more kind than the most kind person in the world, more than Abraham, because God's infinite kindness. But when you do a mitzvah, somehow we're going to see tomorrow, you transcend the limitations of being a finite being, and you embody the essence of God